Hello everybody, and what I want to go through today is a look at the second Scratch assignment. I want to kind of go through it. I'll give you a walkthrough on how to do it. Pardon me, a walks through on how to do it. So let's head over to the 20th page, and under Assessments is where we will find the Scratch assignment number 2. Now, if you are viewing this from my InformNet site, the way you're going to get this content is again through Contents, and then in a similar way, you're going to go to the Assessments page, and from the Assessments page, if you scroll down either in the detailed list or the simple list, you will find Scratch Assignment Example 2. Okay, it's the same link to the same file. So that's where you can find it if you are doing this on your own. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through this step by step, starting by going to the Scratch website. And from the Scratch website, we're going to click Start Creating. Okay, so I'm going to close this. This is fine using this little cat as our character. You don't actually need that. You could pick a different sprite if you really want to. But what we're going to do next is we have to have this character is going to be jumping in this demo, and we're going to try to create some realistic physics of it being able to walk, run, and jump. So to do that, we need a ground area that it can land on. So rather than add another sprite for this, what I'm going to do instead is in the bottom corner, I'm going to use this little button to edit what's called the stage. But I don't want you to click on the button because we're not going to choose a backdrop for this. Instead, what I want you to do is go to this paintbrush, and that paintbrush is how we're going to paint onto the background. So it launches a little mini version of paint right here, and we're going to basically just draw a big rectangle to represent the ground. So we're going to use this tool right here for a rectangle. The only other thing I would recommend is the fill color and the outline color should be the same color. Okay? You want them to be the exact same color, whatever that is, right? I'm actually just going to pick like black, right? So that it's just a black background and a black fill color. And then once I have those, I'm going to use this rectangle tool to draw a rectangle. If it's not quite big enough, I can stretch it out. And you'll see over on this side that that's now going to represent our ground area right there. When you're done, go back up here to the top and click Code to go back to the coding area. And then make sure you're selected the cat right there so that you're ready to go with that. Okay, so now the rest of our work is going to be all in the coding. I'm going to make this a little easier on myself by clicking this option right here. You don't have to. This is the default setting, but that just makes this part a little bit smaller because I'm going to be working so much in the code area over here. Okay, let's get started. So for this to work, we're going to start by making a couple variables. So under the variables section right here, we're going to click Make a Variable. We actually need 4 variables for this particular problem, storing various information about the movement of the cat. One represents the speed. Speed is a measurement of distance over time, and often that's expressed as a changing value that we call velocity. And we're going to talk about this on a forward and backwards sort of way, lefty-righty. But I'm going to use a fancy word, horizontal. The horizontal velocity. If you remember from the first one, you're not going to put any spaces in this word between the two words. Instead, you're going to capitalize the V of velocity in a technique called camel casing. And then I'm going to click OK. So now what you'll see is there's this variable called horizontal velocity. Okay? We're going to click Make a Variable again. And now we're going to make one called vertical velocity, or uppy-downy velocity. You can certainly do that if you want to call it uppy-downy. Use good camel casing, whatever helps you figure it out. If you're more of a math person, Maybe vertical velocity is the y velocity, okay, and horizontal velocity is the x velocity. I'm just going to use those words. You know, programming gives you a lot of flexibility there. Two more variables. One of them is called bounce count. We'll kind of go over what that does a little bit later, but it basically counts how many times our cat bounces when it lands, because we want to try and add a little bit of realism to this. And so, you know, if you run and jump in the air and then land, you don't land often immediately, you kind of bounce to a stop. And then finally, the variable maybe that you were expected, one called gravity. Gravity, there we go. All right, there's our 4 variables. That's what we need for this problem. With those four variables in place, now we can start putting together all of our blocks. While we're in variables, I want you to pull out 4 set bounce count to 0 blocks, like that. 4 of them, okay? Those 4 blocks, whoops, like that, are going to be changing though from all bounce count. So one of them is going to be horizontal velocity, one of them is going to be vertical velocity, one of them will be bounce count, and one of them will be gravity. They'll all be 0 except the gravity one. For that one, I want you to try the number negative 0.3. You can try other numbers later, but that's the number I'm going to use for my gravity number. All right. Next, we're going to go over to events and grab the when flag clicked block, put it out there. We're actually going to need 2 of these, but one of them we're not going to need till much later. So maybe I'll just leave it there for now. We're going to get to that one later. We're going to build one big sort of group of blocks, then we're going to build another smaller group of blocks. Both are fairly big, but we'll start with this one, the biggest. Now we're going to go to control, and we're going to grab the block that says forever, and snap it in place under there. You might remember this block from the previous Scratch example. It just keeps the code rolling and rolling and rolling inside of a loop object. Okay, now while we're still on events, we're going to grab this block here that says if then, but also includes the word else. So this is a little bit different than the if then block we did in the previous one. It also includes the word else, and that block's going to go in there. Okay, so like that. There's going to be a lot of blocks inside of blocks in this problem, which is a technique known as nesting, like a bird that nests inside of a nest, hence the name. All right, so with that block in place, we're now going to go to the section called sensing. Here's where the ground comes into play. We're going to use this block that says touching color. See that block? And it's going to go right in between if and then. Again, these blocks can be a little bit tricky to place, so remember you're always kind of pointing the front end of it towards the spot where it's going in. Don't think of it as the middle. Think of it as the front end of it is going to get tucked in there. Then, where the color, the little circle oval of color is right here, you're going to click on that, and you're going to match the same color that you have for your ground area right here. Now you can guess with your sliders, or you can also use this little eyedropper tool, and then just click on the ground area and it'll match the color perfectly, if you need to. All right. Now that we have that in place, we're going to go back to control, and we're going to get another one of these if, then, else blocks. And you're going to nest this one inside of here. So this one is nesting inside of the other one, but in that way, it's a little bit tricky. You got to kind of make sure it's lined up. If you accidentally put it down here, that's wrong. You put it down here, that's wrong. Put it up here, that's wrong. So you got to be very careful about exactly where that goes. It's going to go in there. Okay. Pausing for a second, letting you check your blocks versus the ones on my screen. And now we're going to go up to operators. We need a little mathematical operator, and we need the one that uses less than. It's a good idea in computer science to start getting used to which is less than and which is greater than, because you'll be using them a lot. But that's the one we want. less than, and instead of the number 50, we just want a 2 there. Okay, into the first oval, we have to go back to variables, and here's our 4 variables listed here, and the one we want is the one at the top, bounce count. Point the front of that to the oval and it'll pop right in there. So if bounce count less than 2. While we're on variables, we're going to need this set bounce count to 0. It's not going to stay that way. We're going to drop it in there for now. We're going to change bounce count to vertical velocity. Okay. And we're not going to leave it at 0. Instead, we're going to grab the vertical velocity block right now, but just put it down here for now. I'm just going to put it there for now, and then jump over to operators, again, to do a little math right now. The math we're going to use is the multiplication math. So you're going to go up here, the third block from the top. It's hard to see, but that's the one that uses multiplication. I'm going to take a second to zoom in on that so you can see it. So it's a little star. So vertical velocity times, and we're going to type -1 right there. This now put together block, that's all one oval, is going to fit in right here. So again, you can grab it, but always point the front of it to the spot where you're going, like that. So that's the way the block will look. Set vertical velocity to vertical velocity times -1. Okay. Now we're going to need 2 more blocks in the, well, actually we'll go in this order. We're now going to go up to the area called looks. Looks. And we're going to grab the one that says switch to costume 2. Notice where I placed it. But we're going to actually go back to costume 1 right there. Now, just above looks, we're going to go to the section called motion. And in motion, you're going to, if you go down, and you actually, it's near the bottom, set Y to a number right here. Whatever that number is, it's not going to stay what it is, but it's going to be to set the Y. And you might remember from math, Y is up and down or vertical. Okay? Now what we're going to put in the oval is another little math equation. So back to operators, and we're going to grab the one at the very top to add 2 things together. What we're going to add, first we get from motion. It's near the bottom of motion. You actually have to scroll a little bit to see it. It's the one that just says Y position. Okay, so that's near the bottom of motion. You actually have to scroll a little bit to find it. And I'm placing this together in the oval before I put it in to its spot up here. I'm going to do it down here first. And then the other oval is going to be filled with one of our variables, the one called vertical velocity. There we go. And that gets placed right there. So to recap, it says set Y to Y position plus vertical velocity. All right, so there's 3 big blocks put in place. 2 more to go on this section we're working on now. Under variables, again, we're going to grab the one that says set bounce count to 0. But what we're going to set is the vertical velocity. Goes right under the block we just built. 2, once again, we're going to do a math equation. So back to operators. This is the division one, so it's the 4th one from the bottom. Okay. What we're dividing by is the number 5. But what goes in the first oval, we get back from our variable section, and we are grabbing, once again, vertical velocity. This whole big built oval will now go in place of the oval there. And so the final block looks like this. Set vertical velocity to vertical velocity divided by 5. If I'm speaking a little too quickly, please pause the video at each point or back up the video to watch and make sure you're getting the right pieces all put together correctly. Or pause it and check what's on your code screen, which is what's on the video. All right, now while we're still back in variables, we're now going to grab the block that says change bounce count by 1. And we actually don't have to change it. That's correct. Change bounce count by 1 is the correct block to be put in this section right here. So these are the blocks, right? The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blocks we've just built, all inside of that area that we started where it said if, where it's nested. Now we need to place one block in this section here where the else goes. And it is the set block again. Starts off as set bounce count to 0, and all we need to change it to is vertical velocity. But 0 is correct. That's what we want to set it to. All right? So just a quick scroll through the blocks we have so far. Pause your video if you need to. Now we're going to work on some blocks in this section down in here. So under the variable section, once again, we're going to start with a set bounce count to 0 block. We're going to change it to vertical velocity as we have before. But in this oval, we're going to do another little math equation. So let's go back to operators, and we're going to add two things together. So we're going to grab the one that adds things, and we're going to go back to variables, and we're going to grab two of our variables. One is vertical velocity, and the other is gravity. So vertical velocity plus gravity, and then this is placed into the oval under set. So let's recall it says set vertical velocity to vertical velocity plus gravity. Then we go back to motion. Motion is the one that actually moves it. And we're going to grab the set Y block again. Place it there, just under the one we just built. And while we're in the motion area, we're going to grab the block called Y position. Just sort of put it down here for now. Y position. And we're going to go to variables. And we're going to grab the one called vertical velocity. Just sort of put it down here for now. And then we're going to go back to operators and grab the one that adds two things together. Put this block in there, put this block in there, and then put this whole big oval block right there. So that it should read set Y to Y position plus vertical velocity. All right, that was tough. That was a lot of stuff there. At this point, if you actually tried your program with all this in place, let's just kind of take a look. If I hit the green flag, you'll actually see the character drop and bounce. Let's try that again. I'm just going to go back to here, raise my cat up, go back to full screen. If I hit this, you'll actually see the cat drop and bounce a couple times. You will also watch these variables a little bit. If you watch those variables, you'll see they're changing as it falls. Let me show you that one more time. Hit the green flag. You can see how they change. It eventually gets all the way back to 0 when it's landed. Okay, so you can kind of see some of the physics starting to work there. All right. Now we got another big sort of group of blocks to make. Starting with control, and just a simple one that's the if-then. Not the one with else, but just the one that says if-then. I'm going to build this block outside of the other blocks for now, and then I will eventually be attaching it in there. All right, so it starts off this way. Then we need to go to sensing. And we need to see in sensing the one that says key space pressed. That's going to go right there. Okay, under sensing. However, it's not going to stay the space. Instead, what we're going to use is our left arrow key. Now, you don't have to do this. You can use something like WASD if you really want to, and you can pick different letters and variable or different keys to go left, right, etc. But this is going to be our left arrow to go left. Okay? If I press that left key, I'm going to go back to motion. Okay? I'm going to point in a direction. Point in a direction. Now it uses a number here, 90. However, if you click on that number you can kind of see it created a little visual cue for me. To go left, I'm actually going to drag that little arrow all the way over to this way. Or I can just type in the number -90 right there. That will be my left direction, -90. Again, you can do that by just dragging this if you want. Handy little feature. And then what I need is some more work with my variables. I'm going to set my horizontal velocity to the number 3. So let's review all these blocks we just put together. If key left arrow pressed, then point in direction -90, set horizontal velocity to, and I realize now I just made a little mistake, -3. There, fixed it. Fix my mistake. Now we're going to do this entire set of blocks again for the right arrow. But we don't need to rebuild the whole thing. We can, like we did in the first one, we can right-click on the word if, duplicate these blocks, bring it down underneath. You can attach it if you want. It's going to get attached. But I'm now going to switch this to the right arrow. -90 is going to become +90, or you can just drag that over to +90, and -3 is just going to become +3. So that's the only difference between left and right. Instead of -90, it's +90. Instead of -3, it's +3. You can snap these two blocks together, these two sets of blocks, and then by grabbing the top of it, you can slide it in underneath all the blocks we've built so far, but still inside the loop, like that. Okay, so let's take a slow scroll through all our code so far. You comparing what's on your screen with what's on mine. All right, now we're going to build another set of blocks using control to start, another if-then. I'm just going to put this here because this is going to be very nested, so we're going to build several things at once. Some of these come from math operators. Under operators, you have to go further down, and you're going to find the word not, N-O-T. You're going to need 2 of these, so go ahead and grab and bring out 2 of these for now. Okay? A couple above the word not, you're going to find one that says and. You're going to need 1 of those. So I'm going to grab those together right now. Okay? Now, we're going to go back to sensing, and we're going to get that one that says key pressed. And you're going to place one of them inside of one of the knots. I'm going to do it this way, like that. And I'm going to go back and select right arrow. And then I'm going to get another one, put it inside the other knot. A little space here. Make that one into left arrow. So I have one that says key left arrow and key right arrow, both inside of something that says not. So not key left arrow pressed, not key right arrow pressed. Now the tricky part is you need to take each one of these and place it inside of this one. Nest it in there. And nest this one in there. So again, always remember the front of it is where you're going to point it. Then this entire thing, which again is a little tricky to grab and move, gets placed inside of the if block area. So I'm going to have to shrink this down to show you it all on the screen at once. But what it should say is, if not key left arrow pressed and not key right arrow pressed, then. That's a really long set of blocks all piled up and nested together. But that's the way it's going to work. Then we go back to variables, grab our set bounce count to 0 block again, place it inside there, switch bounce count to horizontal velocity. Then we go back to math operators, grab the third one down to do a multiplication. I'm going to zoom in so you for sure can see which one I'm talking about, the one that multiplies 2 things together. Okay. In the second oval, type the number 0, decimal 92. You can try other numbers, but this one I find works pretty well. And into the first oval, we have to go back to variables, grab the one called horizontal velocity. That's what goes in there. This whole thing then gets placed in the oval right there. And I'll read it to you. Set horizontal velocity to horizontal velocity times 0.92. This whole big thing we just built, let me back up a bit, is going to be placed underneath all the blocks we have so far. Be careful not to put it inside or get it put into the wrong place. It just gets snapped underneath the bottom there. All right, so I got to make it a little bit smaller, but we're going to do a slow crawl again. So feel free to pause the video if you need to double check it. Now I'll zoom in. We have one block left here at the bottom, and then we have one more sort of set of blocks to build. Whew. Okay, this is under motion. It's the one that says change X by 10. I'm going to drop that at the very bottom. X is the left-right or the horizontal. The horizontal positioning there. So we then need to go back to variables and grab horizontal velocity to drop it into that last piece right there. Okay? This completes the largest set of blocks for this one. It's now completed, all these blocks here. We're going to now build either underneath it or beside it. If you want to scroll over, you can do it beside it. Another kind of big set of blocks to go with this one that we've just finished, right? So we got this one finished. So now we're going to build another one just underneath it. However, before we get started, let's see if this made any change to our cat. So I hit the flag, it drops again. But now I'm going to try hitting my left and right arrow. And you'll see the cat does, in fact, move forwards and backwards. But it does this weird flippy when it does this. Flips around. Okay, to fix the flipping around thing, we're going to go back to our editor, where the sprite is right here. And you're going to click on this thing here that says direction. Direction 90. You're going to click on it, and this thing pops up, which we saw before. But what you actually have to click on is this setting right here. This is what makes the sprite just flip over rather than try and do a turn. So if you have this setting as opposed to this setting clicked, like that. Now when you try this, now when you move your left and right arrow keys, now it just turns around. It doesn't try to spin around. Now you'll notice when you let go of the left and right, it doesn't stop immediately. It glides to a stop. That's again trying to add a little bit of realism to this. The same way we had it bounce to try and create a little bit of realism. All right, the final thing is we've got to get this thing to jump. So now we're going to work on a set of blocks to make this thing jump into the air. All right, back to events. Grabbing the one that says when flag clicked. That's going to go there. This is a much smaller set of blocks. Then we're going to go to control. We're going to grab the block again called forever, place it there. The forever block is just used so that after you click the flag, it just keeps running the code over and over again. We're then going to grab the one that says if then, not the one with else, but the one with if then, place it inside there. Move this up a little bit so it's easier for you guys to see. And again, I'm just building this set of blocks underneath the other one. And then you're going to grab another one of those if-thens and nest it in there. So it's nesting and nesting and nesting. Okay, perfect. Now we're going to go back to sensing. Grab the one that says key space pressed, place it in that first hexagon. And space is going to be what I'm going to use. So I'm going to use space for jumping. If you don't want to use space, if you want to use W or some other key, go ahead and use that. Then into the second hexagon, we're going to once again go to the touching color block. Once again, we're going to have to take this color and match the color of the ground. I'm going to use my eyedropper for that. Click on the ground, then it matches the color perfectly. Beautiful. Now we're going to go back to variables, grab two of our set bounce count blocks, Okay? The first one is correct, set bounce count to 0. The second one's going to set vertical velocity to the number 6. So let's pause on our code for a second. When flag clicked, forever, if key space pressed, then, if touching color, in my case black, then, set bounce count to 0, set vertical velocity to 6. We're almost there, kids. Next is looks. We're going to switch to costume 2. Okay, so when I hit the space bar, it's going to switch to costume 2. Then we're going to go to motion. We're going to set Y to, right now it's to 60, but we're going to change that. While we're in motion, we're going to grab, we have to scroll a little bit, the block called Y position. Sort of pull it out there for now, Y position. We're going to jump over to variables. We're going to grab the block called vertical velocity. It's one of our variables. Then we're going to jump back to operators and grab the block that does adding right at the top, adding two things together. We're going to put Y position in one part. We're going to put vertical velocity in the other part. So it looks like that. We're going to take that whole block and put it in place of 60. So it says set Y to Y position plus vertical velocity. And we have completed all the blocks. Now we're going to try this out in a second, but I'm going to do one last slow crawl on this to try and make sure that we got the blocks we need. Slow crawl. I'm not going to read it. I'm going to slowly crawl through these blocks. So if you're on your video, you can pause this if necessary. I realize that one block goes a little bit off the screen, but I think you can handle that through this set right here. Okay, big finale. Let's see how this works. I click the flag, the cat drops. I know I can move left and right, but if I hit the space bar, our cat launches itself into the air and jumps. And that's it. Now, let's not forget how we hand this in. We go to File, Save to our computer. It downloads it. You will need to rename this thing. Look at all those superheroes and villains. Anyways, here it is in my downloads folder. I'm just going to drop it on the desktop for now. Remember, you're going to rename this thing. Right click, rename. You're going to put your name. That's really important, so I know it comes from you. You can leave it called Scratch Project. That's fine. You're then going to go to my website. The assessments page is fine. You're going to click on Hand in Page. You're going to click Add File. You're going to select the file from this device. There it is. Click Open. Now the file's there. You're going to click Upload. And finally, you're going to hit Submit. When you see the screen that shows you that you've been successful, there it is. You have completed the Scratch assignment. Thanks, everybody. See you next time.